One of the recent questions that we received was, hey, what do you prefer, these trend lines, right? Because trend is your friend or support resistance. And one of the things I tell people is that both are very, very helpful. Now, you can comment below, tell me your opinion. I know a lot of people love trend because you have, trend lines that give you, support resistance levels. But I personally like going for support resistance. Why? Let's just say hypothetically we found we found an old trend line here on an old chart that says 48.50 was going to hold. Hence, we knew that that was a hold today. We took a long today and shares on the recovery of that recovery of 4,800. But there's no way for me to know if the trend is changing, right? Until I know if an old trend line is defending, as opposed to support resistance holds. I could take a long. So, for example, when we gave you guys on the 13th or 14th, if you look back at one of our videos, regarding the mid-March trend going into FOMC, we knew it was trend by the third candle. Actually, if you look at the video, we actually knew the bottom using some other tools we use. But let's just say you're not in our Discord, you don't have these tools. So, well, how did you know trends was change? Well, the first candle is your bottom. You could take it, right? But you don't know, right? If you're not using support resistance and you black this out, right? Let's just say I delete all my horizontal lines, and if I hide them here, then 1 second for me. Let me hide all my horizontal lines. You can say, um, okay, well, now you have to tell me if these horizontal lines were in here. If I didn't have them before, how would I know that this is a low, right? Other than a bounce, right? But if this bounces, where are you taking your long? You're taking your long where I gave you a support resistance levels from before. You're not taking it after what was that, almost 100-point bounce. You're saying, okay, so by me having a support resistance, I know a long I could risk on. Then I leave my stop loss. Just say it goes 2 days. My stop loss hasn't hit. Now I go a third day. Well, the third candle is what, like 2 days actually makes trend, but a third candle is my confirmation. I like wait for a third day of trend to show. Even though right here, these three guys gave us sort of trend because these two were trend and that was opposite. They're trapped, so that doesn't always give it to you. But support resistance levels are basically liquidity zones, and markers go trap and then go come up here and sell. And if there's no buyers, they keep going, they keep going, they keep looking. But by having support resistance levels that I've marked in the past and I just drag on indefinitely, I can say, okay, wait a minute, I have a support level from December, February. It could be from last week for all I know. But if I see a bounce on the smaller time frame, right on the 15-minute, which is typically what I use, I've sometimes used an hour, but 15 minutes, I say, okay, well, it held. I take my long and I run my stop loss, right? Then I say to you, well, 50.35 is support. Well, if we recovered, I'm already long because I had an old trend line that I kept from before. You never know when a trend line is going to get hit from decades ago. We could have trend lines from the 1980s for all we know. There's no way for you to know that unless you're carrying them over. Now, I know some people say, well, it gets the chart messy. I rather have these labeled by color and time frame if I go back and put in the effort than assume, oh, it was green today. Was it going to green tomorrow? Is this guy going to say something about tariffs? Is there somebody else going to say something about the Japan carryover rate? There's so many variables without knowing. I'd rather know what are my support resistance levels based on the past liquidity, right? Does it mean it's going to hold? No. I told everybody it's very, very possible that one of these levels, there was a cluster here, there was a cluster here, it blew through and it grabbed, a little bit under. But that's the name of the game, right? The probabilities is what we trade, in our Discord and within our team. But we say first we got to see a support capture, grab liquidity and capture. We had a trend line here from before, and we knew we had support. So we hit the trend line on the lower time frame. We defended it. We started working our way up. All we're doing is stop losses. Now, let's say tomorrow or the next day, this trend line is still holding. Wait a second. Okay. So there's liquidity here. Doesn't mean it has to go lower. I know we're going to go lower, probably into a tax season, but I look at my support resistance levels, and then after I get a third candle, let's just say the my stop loss hits, right? The play comes back to 49.59. I get stopped out, right? Because I ran a stop loss, and that's how it works. The trading stop loss kicks me out. But then I know I have a trend line here that's very, very old. If you look back here, we haven't hit this in several years. but apparently the market found liquidity. I don't have to guess. I don't have to go back and start running and spend hours and hours. Yes, it adds a little bit to my screen, but I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anybody that you're not keeping old trend lines or old support resistance levels. Most people like the day trade and scalp. I totally get it. There's a lot of profitability, but 80% of you are losing. You're not profitable because they get the emails of people that want to learn something new, because you're losing in the market. Even our success rate is about 80%, but because we use these systems. So I'm a bigger fan of using support resistance and then adding trend line as we go. As like we had found before, this trend line was showing it repeated here. We bounced up, but we had a resistance, right? So you trail the resistance because I don't know if I'm going to hit this support line up here, right? When during the election, when nobody knows, other than inside traders, nobody knows. This rejected, but this was a trend line. How do we know it's going to hold? We don't, right? But I have support resistance levels in the middle all around here. I know that a trend broke down and it rejected, but this thing could have rejected easily up at 58.26 later in April, right? No one knows that, right? Other than we use, like I said, our tools. What we do know is that we had a support and a trend line that hit perfectly, which is a short we gave everybody. And we said if this trend line breaks, we're going to possibly retest 55.31. Again, another trend line sandwiched in between a support resistance levels. Now we look at new support resistance. Does this 50.75 become a new support resistance? We'll find out if it comes back. Does the market come back down here? No one knows that, but you're using your probabilities of tools. If support holds, support fails, rejects, becomes resistance. But the trend line holding here tells me, hey, if we come back to this area, hypothetically speaking, even a little bit higher, let's say 59.08 or 50, well, let's put it for the next pivot, which is going to be on Friday. Let's just say we come back and hit 58.61. It's a little bit higher. Excuse me. It's not the same range as this, but it's on an old trend line that is a very, very slow uptrend. Just like here, this was a slow uptrend. This turned out to be a stronger uptrend that we caught, but we didn't know we were going to catch them until the resistance held again, and we said, hey, we have 2 days, we can risk on a little bit more because we have a support. So I'm a bigger fan of support resistance levels and then letting the trend catch up with time, because I can say, okay, well, the August trend line is here. If you were waiting for this trend line, you haven't taken a position until May. You took a year to take a position, which is very likely. I know people that take trend lines and they don't touch anything until they revisit. But again, there's a lot of trend line people because trend is your friend. But how do you know there's a reversal? You don't. You don't until you have almost 2 or 3 days, which is fine because that's what we did here. But we let the support resistance level supersede the trend, because if that is liquidity that's found, markets are going to want to go here and trap. Just like they crashed here, they trapped a bunch of bears that were late to the game on Monday, and now they're coming up. It could be just a dead cat bounce. It could be just a short squeeze, but I have a trend here. I have a trend line and I have a support right there. So I can ping pong here, ping pong in this whole area. But this old trend line held. That tells me market makers may in fact start moving up, maybe for a few days, maybe not, maybe into maybe Monday the 23rd, and then reject, or they intersect here roughly May 5th. We could be up here, right? Which is something we might suspect, is I think we're going to go bullish at the end of April. But when we see these intersecting points, we match them with our AI pivots. But trend is only your friend after it moves, so you're delayed. So if you waited the third day, okay, you got a long here at 56.50, but what a phenomenal long it was at the 5,500 when we gave you the pivot. Just like when we said, hey, this is going to back test and it's going to collapse because there's no such thing as bullish tariffs. It worked perfectly. It gives us high probability, good risk reward trades without having to guess, without having to go to some guru and find out, oh, is trend my friend? Are we trending up and down? Who's going to say what? The noise means nothing to me. When this held, we knew there was going to be some sort of fake news. Why? Because we had a green candle and no news has hit the wire about, a delay in tariffs. That meant nothing to us because insiders were already trading to get out of this drop before. So again, we prefer support resistance levels and then use supplementary tools again, like trend lines, our AI system that gives us pivots, actually gives us our dark pools. It gives us high probability dates of, when to run, how we knew that this was going to run for 14 days, how we knew that this was going to break down and we were going to get waterfalls potentially into this week, and how we know there's a good probability after tax season we're going to start running into OPEX. These are all tools we use as probabilities in trading, and it's not 100%. Nobody does, not even the notorious Tommy Lee can give you 100% trading. But I would tell people defer to support resistance first, and then track your trend line and leave them there. Maybe change their color. You could hide them like I showed you before, but let trend be where you keep your position and keep going, so you don't have to anticipate. I have a downtrend here that can become resistance, right? That broke down for me to defend it. When I thought I was going to defend, and then it broke down. And now I know where exactly to short, where to backtest and take a risk on short, because obviously we're on a downtrend. But if it breaks through, I know, hey, my short didn't work, and keep it tight. Why? Because we know there's guys trapped here and there's guys trapped here, because those are support resistance levels. So trend doesn't have to tell me that. I could look at, where the support resistance is and know more than just the assumption that is a 3rd day going to be trend. Is it a 2-day trend? Is it just a 1-day trend? But again, comment below, subscribe, email us if you want to join our Discord and learn some of these tools.